the silent departure. The massive space station loomed before them like a crystalline mountain floating in the void. Ambassador Alina Vasquez pressed her palm against the cool viewport of the transport ship and studied the structure that would determine humanity's future. Nexus Prime stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, its surface gleaming with the light of 3 different suns. This was the heart of galactic civilization, home to the Galactic Council that governed over 2,000 species across the galaxy. "First time seeing it?" asked Dr. Marcus Chen as he joined her at the observation deck. His arms were full of data tablets containing humanity's greatest achievements. As Earth's chief science officer, he had spent months preparing presentations that would showcase human innovation and potential. "Yes," Alina replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "It's magnificent. Hard to believe that in a few hours we'll be standing in the same chamber where galactic history has been made for the past 10,000 years." Captain Sarah O'Brien approached from behind, her military uniform perfectly pressed and her bearing straight as an arrow. She carried ceremonial items representing Earth's unified military forces. The briefing materials say this station houses representatives from over 800 species. Some of them have been council members since before Earth even had complex life. Alina nodded. She had memorized every detail about the Galactic Council during her preparation. For 2 centuries, humanity had been sending messages requesting consideration for membership. For 2 centuries, those messages had been ignored. Then, 6 months ago, everything changed. A brief communication had arrived at Earth's diplomatic headquarters. The message was short and seemed almost irritated. "The species from the Sol system may present their case at the next Standard Council session. No congratulations for finally getting their attention. No welcome to the galactic community. Just a grudging acknowledgement that humans existed and deserved a few minutes of the Council's time." "Remember," Alina said to her companions, "we represent every human being alive today. Everyone on Earth, Mars, the Jupiter colonies, and the outer settlements. This is our moment to show the galaxy what humanity can contribute." Dr. Chen adjusted his glasses and looked down at his research. "The data is impressive. We've made incredible advances in medicine, sustainable energy, and space exploration. Our fusion technology alone has revolutionized power generation across human space." Captain O'Brien crossed her arms. "Our military record speaks for itself. We've never started a war of conquest, but we've always been ready to defend innocent people. The Arcturus incident proved that human forces can stand against any threat." The transport ship shuddered slightly as it docked with the station. The 3 humans gathered their materials and prepared to make history. Alina wore her finest diplomatic attire, representing Earth's government. Dr. Chen carried scientific equipment and holographic displays. Captain O'Brien bore the ceremonial weapons that symbolized humanity's commitment to peace through strength. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and they stepped into the station proper. The corridor was enormous, clearly designed for beings much larger than humans. The ceiling stretched up nearly 100 feet, and the walls were covered in some kind of living material that pulsed with soft, colorful light. Strange symbols covered every surface, writing in dozens of languages that had been used for millennia before humans had even developed agriculture. "This way," announced a floating mechanical guide. Its surface was covered in blinking lights that formed patterns the humans couldn't interpret. "You are the delegation from Sol 3. Please follow me to the council chambers." They walked through corridor after corridor, passing other beings that made Elena's heart race with excitement and nervousness. Some looked almost human, but with different proportions or skin colors. Others were completely alien, with multiple limbs, crystalline bodies, or shapes that defied easy description. A few were so strange that Elena couldn't even determine which end was the front. Most of the aliens paid no attention to the humans. A few stared at them with what might have been curiosity. One group of tall, grey beings with elongated skulls pointed at the humans and made sounds that their translation devices couldn't interpret, but the tone seemed dismissive. "They're looking at us like we're tourists," Dr. Chen whispered. "Or specimens," Captain O'Brien added quietly. The mechanical guide led them to a waiting area outside the main council chambers. Through the transparent aluminum walls, they could see the massive amphitheater beyond. It was shaped like a bowl, with seating arranged in concentric circles rising toward the ceiling. At the center was a raised platform where speakers would present their cases. The scale was overwhelming, designed to make petitioners feel small and insignificant. "You will be called when the council is ready," the guide announced before floating away. Elena sat on one of the few human-sized chairs and reviewed her notes one final time. She had prepared a speech about humanity's desire to join the galactic community and contribute their unique perspectives. She had practiced it hundreds of times, but now her mouth felt dry and her hands were slightly unsteady. "The population statistics are remarkable," Dr. Chen said, going through his data. 12 billion humans across 47 worlds and stations. We've terraformed 8 planets and established permanent bases on over 100 moons. Our expansion rate is faster than any species in recorded galactic history. And our military capabilities, Captain O'Brien added, show that we can defend ourselves and our allies. The defeat of the Void Reapers at Arcturus proved that human tactics and technology can overcome seemingly impossible odds. Through the transparent wall, they watched the council chambers filling up. Beings of every imaginable shape and size took their designated seats. Some floated in specialized atmospheric bubbles. Others climbed to perches designed for their unique anatomy. The diversity was staggering. "Look at that section." Dr. Chen pointed to a group of beings that resembled walking trees. "The Verdanian Collective. They've been members for over 5,000 years. And there," he indicated another area, the crystalline hegemony. "They're said to be the oldest continuous civilization in the galaxy." Elena observed the seating arrangements with growing unease. Each species had its own section with seats perfectly adapted to their physiology. The humans would be standing alone on the central platform, looking up at hundreds of beings who had mastered space travel before Earth's civilization had even begun. A larger, more elaborate mechanical guide approached them. "The council will see the Sol 3 delegation now. Please follow me." Elena stood and straightened her jacket. Dr. Chen gathered his presentation materials. Captain O'Brien checked her uniform one final time. Together, they walked toward the entrance to the council chambers. The doors were massive, made of some kind of smart material that seemed to shift and flow as they approached. As the entrance opened, the sound of hundreds of conversations in dozens of languages filled the air. The translation devices worked frantically, creating a buzz of overlapping voices. Elena took a deep breath and stepped into the chamber. The conversation stopped abruptly as the 3 humans walked to the center platform. She could feel hundreds of eyes, sensors, and other sensory organs focused on them from every direction. The platform elevated them about 20 feet above the chamber floor, putting them at eye level with the lower tiers of council members. At the highest level sat the Council of Elders, the most powerful beings in galactic civilization. High Regent Xylothian dominated the center position, his massive reptilian form draped in robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. His yellow eyes fixed on the humans with what could only be described as amusement. So Xylothian's voice boomed through the chamber's acoustic system. The hairless primates have finally decided to grace us with their presence. A wave of what sounded like laughter rippled through the assembly. Alina recognized some of the sounds as expressions of amusement, though many were too alien for her to interpret fully. Alina stepped forward and spoke clearly into the provided microphone. Honored council members, EM Ambassador Elena Vasquez, representing the United Earth government and all human colonies. We come before you with respect and hope for membership in this great galactic community. Hope, repeated Councillor Rectal, a massive insectoid being whose species had been exploring space for millennia. How touching. The children have hope. More laughter echoed through the chamber. Alina felt her face grow warm, but kept her expression neutral and professional. We come to present our case for membership in the Galactic Council, Alina continued. Humanity has much to offer the galactic community in terms of innovation, perspective, and commitment to peaceful cooperation. Offer. High Regent Z leaned forward in his seat, his massive form casting a shadow over the platform. What could a species that has barely crawled out of its birth system possibly offer us? Dr. Chen stepped forward, his data tablets ready. If I may, High Regent, I would like to present our technological achievements. The chamber's central display system activated, showing holographic projections of human innovations. Dr. Chen's voice remained steady and professional as he began his presentation. Asterisk. In the past 3 centuries, humanity has advanced from primitive chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel. We have developed clean fusion energy that powers our entire civilization without environmental damage. Our medical technology has eliminated most diseases and extended human lifespan to over 300 years. Adequate, rumbled Elder Thymus, whose crystalline form had been ancient when most current species were still developing language, but hardly impressive. We were using fusion power when your species was still discovering fire. Dr. Chen continued, despite the interruption. We have terraformed 8 worlds and developed sustainable ecosystems that support billions of people. Our terraforming technology can restore dead worlds to life within decades. Terraforming, laughed Councillor Rectal, his mandibles clicking with amusement. You have learned to garden on a planetary scale. How quaint. The presentation continued for over an hour, with each human achievement met by dismissive comments or outright ridicule. When Dr. Chen mentioned humanity's exploration of their local stellar neighborhood, the chamber erupted in laughter. You celebrate mapping your own backyard, said Councillor Nexus, whose species had mapped entire galactic sectors. We were exploring other galaxies before your son was born. Captain O'Brien stepped forward for her portion of the presentation. Our military philosophy is based on defense and protection of innocent life. We have never started a war of conquest, but we have always been ready to defend our people and our allies. This brought the loudest laughter yet. High Regent Xylothian's massive form shook with mirth. Your little ships and primitive weapons are adorable. We have plasma cannons that could vaporize your entire fleet before you could power up your engines. Defensive warfare, sneered Councillor Rectal. The weak always claim they fight only for defense. It is the excuse of those who lack the strength to take what they want. Alina watched as every human achievement was dismissed with condescending remarks. The council members seemed to enjoy belittling humanity's progress. Some were openly laughing, while others made comments to their neighbors in languages that translation devices couldn't interpret. Our greatest strength, Alina said, raising her voice slightly, is our ability to adapt and overcome challenges. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, and global wars. We have rebuilt our civilization from nothing multiple times. We have learnt to work together despite our differences. Survival. High Regent Xylothian's laughter boomed through the chamber. You think survival is an achievement? Even the most pathetic species manages to survive long enough to crawl into space. Your persistence is not admirable. It is merely adequate. Elder Thymus spoke for the first time, his voice like the sound of crystal wind chimes. Perhaps the young species would like to tell us about their greatest scientific breakthrough. Dr. Chen straightened his shoulders and tried once more. We have developed quantum computers that can process information at unprecedented speeds. Our artificial intelligence systems help manage everything from resource distribution to medical diagnosis. Quantum computing, Elder Thymus sighed with what sounded like boredom. We mastered quantum mechanics before your planet had cooled from its formation. Your computers are toys compared to our technology. The mockery continued as every aspect of human achievement was torn apart. When Alina mentioned humanity's diplomatic efforts to maintain peace, the council members laughed even harder. Peace treaties with yourselves, chimed Elder Thymus. How remarkable that you have learned basic cooperation. Do you also celebrate learning to share food and shelter? Alina felt something cold settle in her stomach. This was not going as planned. The three humans stood in silence as the laughter and mockery continued around them. She had expected some skepticism, perhaps even resistance, but not this level of deliberate humiliation. She looked up at the sea of alien faces, most showing amusement or contempt. A few seemed genuinely curious about humanity, but they were vastly outnumbered by those who clearly viewed humans as inferior. The worst moment came when High Regent Xylothian leaned forward and spoke with mock sympathy. Perhaps the young species would benefit from another few thousand years of development. Come back when you have something meaningful to contribute. Alina exchanged glances with Dr. Chen and Captain O'Brien. In that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. She stepped forward to the microphone and spoke in a clear, calm voice. Thank you for your time, honored council members. We have heard your assessment of humanity's qualifications for membership. She paused, looking up at the hundreds of beings who had spent the past hour mocking everything her species had achieved. When she spoke again, her voice carried a quiet dignity that somehow cut through the noise of the chamber. We withdraw our application for membership in the Galactic Council. The laughter stopped abruptly. The chamber fell silent as her words were translated into hundreds of languages. Alina turned to her companions. Dr. Chen, Captain O'Brien, please gather your materials. We're leaving. Without another word, without argument or pleading, the three humans collected their presentations and walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet chamber as hundreds of beings watched them leave. They walked through the massive corridors of the station in silence, their dignity intact despite the humiliation they had endured. Behind them, the council chambers erupted in confused chatter as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Alina Vasquez had done something unprecedented in the 10,000-year history of the Galactic Council. She had walked away. The Galactic Awakening. The silence in the council chambers lasted exactly 17 seconds. Ambassador Kethfer, representing the Altarian Union, was the first to speak. His blue-scaled form shifted uncomfortably in his seat as he processed what had just happened. "High Regent," he said carefully, "in 10,000 years of Council history, no species has ever withdrawn their application for membership. High Regent." Xylothian's massive reptilian head turned toward Kethva, his yellow eyes still gleaming with amusement. "Then it is a historic day. The first species too proud to accept their obvious limitations." But Kethva had studied the human presentation carefully. Unlike many of his colleagues, he had actually listened to what the humans had said, rather than simply dismissing them. Their technological advancement rate is unprecedented. They achieved faster-than-light travel in less than 4 centuries of like child's play, rumbled Elder Thymus, his crystalline form pulsing with dismissive light. "We achieved such things eons ago." "Yes," Kethva replied, "but it took your species 12,000 years to develop FTL from their first spaceflight. It took the Verdanians 8,000 years. The humans did it in 4 centuries. Council of Rectal S mandibles clicked with irritation. Speed is not necessarily an indicator of advancement. Perhaps they simply stumbled upon the technology by accident. Their terraforming techniques are completely original," Kethva continued. "They don't simply reshape worlds to suit their needs. They create entirely new ecosystems that are more robust than the original ones." Gardening, Elder Thymus dismissed. Elaborate gardening. But Ambassador Kethva was not finished. "Their military record against the Void Reapers at Arcturus suggests capabilities far beyond what they presented today. Intelligence reports indicate they developed entirely new tactical approaches that proved effective against a threat that had destroyed 3 established civilizations." The chamber grew quieter as other council members began to pay attention. The Void Reapers had been a genuine threat to galactic civilization, appearing from dark space with technology that seemed to counter every known defense. 3 member species had been completely destroyed before the threat had mysteriously vanished. "What are you suggesting, High Regent?" Xylothian asked, his amusement beginning to fade. "I'm suggesting," Kethva said carefully, "that perhaps we should have listened more carefully to what the humans were actually saying." Meanwhile, aboard the human transport ship departing from Nexus Prime, Alina Vasquez sat in the captain's chair and composed a message to Earth. Her hands were steady now, her voice calm and professional. "Mission report to Earth Command. The Galactic Council has made their position regarding humanity quite clear. They view us as primitive, insignificant, and unworthy of membership. We have therefore withdrawn our application and are returning to Earth." She paused, looking out at the stars that had suddenly become humanity's sole domain again. "Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol 7. All trade agreements with Council member species are to be reviewed and potentially terminated. All research sharing programs are to be suspended. All diplomatic communications with Council members are to be redirected through standard channels with no priority status." Dr. Chen looked up from his data tablets. "Alina, Protocol 7 will cut off all our connections to galactic civilization. We'll be completely isolated." "No," Alina replied firmly. "We'll be independent. There's a difference." Captain O'Brien nodded approvingly. "The Admiral will want to know about the Council's military dismissal of our capabilities. They seemed to think our fleet was a joke." "Let them think that," Alina said. "It might serve us well in the future." "Let them think that," Alina said. "It might serve us well in the future." The message was transmitted to Earth, and within hours, the response came back from President Martinez herself. "Protocol 7 approved. Implementation begins immediately. Well done, Ambassador. Come home." across human space, the effects of Protocol 7 began almost immediately. Admiral Torres, commanding the human defense fleet from Lunar Station, received new orders that made her smile grimly. All joint patrol agreements with Council member species are terminated, she announced to her staff. All shared intelligence networks are to be disconnected. All Council ships are to be treated as foreign vessels with no special privileges. The immediate effect was subtle but significant. Human patrol ships that had been providing security for Council trade routes simply stopped showing up. Intelligence networks that had relied on human early warning systems found themselves blind to threats in several sectors. Captain Sarah Martinez, commanding the cargo vessel New Horizons, was among the first to implement the new policies. When the Altarian merchant ship Prosperity sent a routine request for navigation data through the Centauri Passage, Sarah's response was brief. Navigation data is available through standard diplomatic channels. New Horizons out. The Altarian captain was confused. For decades, human ships had freely shared navigation data with Council vessels. The cooperation had been automatic, taken for granted. New Horizons, this is Captain Veltar. We have shared navigation data for 30 years. Why the sudden change? Sarah's response was professionally neutral. Policy has changed. Contact the Altarian Embassy on Earth for current procedures. But the Altarian Embassy on Earth was receiving similar responses to all their communications. Requests that had previously been processed within hours were now being routed through formal diplomatic channels that took weeks to navigate. Within a month, the effects were spreading throughout Council space. Trade routes that had relied on human-maintained navigation beacons began experiencing delays. Commercial agreements that had provided Council worlds with human-manufactured goods started expiring without renewal. The economic impact was more significant than anyone had anticipated. Human manufacturing had become integral to the Galactic economy, not because it was the most advanced, but because it was incredibly efficient and reliable. Human goods were competitively priced, well-made, and delivered on time. Merchant Captain Zilks of the Centaurian Trade Guild was among the first to notice the problem. His routes through human space, which had been his most profitable runs, were suddenly restricted. Human customs officials who had previously processed his cargo within hours were now requiring extensive documentation and inspections. "This is ridiculous," he complained to his trading partner. "The humans are acting like we're strangers. We've been doing business for 50 years. But the humans were not being hostile or obstructive. They were simply treating Council members the same way they treated any other foreign power. The special consideration, the easy access, the cooperative agreements were all gone." Professor Lynx, a Vidanian scientist who had been collaborating with human researchers on terraforming projects, found her access to human research data suddenly restricted. Her requests for information were being redirected through formal channels. That would take months to process. "I don't understand," she told her research team. "Dr. Chen and his team were sharing data freely just last month. Now they're treating me like I'm applying for classified information." The reality was that human research data had been classified, not because it was being hidden, but because it was being protected. The casual sharing of information that had characterized human Council relations was over. Back on Nexus Prime, the Council was beginning to realize that something significant had happened. Reports were coming in from across Council space about disruptions to trade, research, and security arrangements. Ambassador Kethfer was reviewing the reports when he received a priority message from his homeworld. The Altarian government was concerned about the sudden changes in human behavior and wanted to know what had happened at the council session. The humans withdrew their application. Kethva explained to his superiors. They were insulted by the council's response to their presentation. Insulted. The response came back immediately. Over what? A few jokes about their primitive technology. Kethva paused before responding. He had watched the entire session, and he was beginning to understand what had really happened. It wasn't just jokes. The council subjected them to deliberate. Humiliation for over an hour. Every achievement was mocked, every capability dismissed. They were treated like children begging for approval. And now they're disrupting trade throughout the galaxy because their feelings were hurt. No, Kethva replied carefully. They're not disrupting anything. They're simply no longer providing preferential treatment to council members. They're treating us the same way we treated them. The implications were sinking in throughout council. Space. The humans had not retaliated or struck back in anger. They had simply withdrawn their cooperation and returned to treating council members as foreign entities rather than partners. High Regent Xylothian was forced to convene an emergency session when reports of the disruptions reached critical levels. The chamber was less full than usual, as several species were dealing with crises in their own territories. The situation is becoming problematic, announced Councillor Rectile. The humans have terminated 17 trade agreements and suspended 43 research partnerships. Our shipping lanes are experiencing significant delays. Surely this is a temporary tantrum, Elder Thymus suggested. When they realize the consequences of isolation, they will return, seeking readmission. But Ambassador Kethva had been monitoring human communications, and what he was hearing suggested something very different. The humans are not seeking readmission. They're not even mentioning the Council in their diplomatic communications. They appear to be moving forward independently. High Regent Xylothian's voice carried a note of concern. What do you mean? They're establishing new trade agreements with non-council species. They're expanding their exploration programs. They're acting as if the council doesn't exist. The chamber fell silent as the implications of this became clear. The humans were not waiting for council approval to participate in galactic civilization. They were creating their own networks, their own alliances, their own sphere of influence. This is unprecedented, admitted Elder Thymus. No species has ever simply ignored the Council's authority. They're not ignoring it, Kethva corrected. They're rejecting it. They've decided they don't need our approval to be part of galactic civilization. Reports continued to flow in over the following weeks. The humans had established formal diplomatic relations with 12 non-council species. They had negotiated mining rights in 3 unclaimed systems. They had begun construction of a new space station that would serve as a hub for their expanding trade network. Most significantly, they had started accepting refugees from the Void Reaper attacks. Species that had been left homeless by the recent conflicts were finding sanctuary in human space, something the Council had been too bureaucratic to organize effectively. They're building their own civilization, Kethva reported to an increasingly nervous Council, and they're doing it without us. The final revelation came when intelligence reports revealed the true extent of human military capabilities. The defensive systems they had mentioned in their presentation were only the beginning. The humans had developed new types of weapons, new tactical approaches, and new technologies that were completely unknown to Council military analysts. Their victory over the Void Reapers wasn't luck, Admiral Kethva's military advisor reported. They developed specifically designed counterweapons and tactics. The Reapers didn't mysteriously disappear. The humans destroyed them. High Regent. Xylothian stared at the intelligence reports in growing alarm. Are you telling me that this primitive species single-handedly eliminated a threat that destroyed 3 of our member civilizations? Yes, sir, and they did it without asking for our help or even informing us of their actions. The council chambers erupted in concerned chatter. The humans had not just been hiding their capabilities, they had been actively protecting council space without seeking recognition or reward. Perhaps, suggested Ambassador Kethva quietly, we should consider reopening diplomatic communications with the humans. Absolutely not, Elder Thymus declared. We cannot appear to be begging for their attention. If they wish to rejoin galactic civilization, they must reapply through proper channels. But the humans showed no interest in replying. They were too busy building their own version of galactic civilization, one that was apparently more efficient, more inclusive, and more effective than the Council's 10,000-year-old bureaucracy. Ambassador Elena Buscus, now back on Earth, received daily reports about the Council's growing concerns. She read them with quiet satisfaction while preparing for humanity's next phase of expansion. Dr. Chen, she said to her former colleague, how many species have requested to join our new alliance? Dr. Chen, she said to her former colleague, how many species have requested to join our new alliance? 47, as of this morning, Dr. Chen replied, including 3 former council members who have withdrawn their membership. Elena nodded. And our exploration programs, ahead of schedule. We've identified 37 habitable worlds in unclaimed space. Terraforming operations have begun on 12 of them. Excellent. And Captain O'Brien's military assessment. Our defenses are more than adequate. In fact, several species have requested human military assistance with their own security challenges. Elena looked out at the stars and smiled. The Council had been wrong about many things, but they had been right about one thing. Humanity was not ready for membership in their organization. They were ready for something much better. The humans had not just left the council chambers that day, they had left behind the need for anyone else's approval to claim their place in the galaxy, and the galaxy was beginning to realize that might have been the biggest mistake in council history. The laughter had stopped, but the consequences were just beginning. Asterisk.